So we do have a one item agenda to do quickly, so let's go ahead and do that. We'll call the meeting to order. All directors are present except for Director Lang. Tell us about infrastructure.
Yeah, so Canvas, and I'm gonna borrow Sean's expertise. Canvas is a student learning platform. Is that the correct title, or what would we call Canvas?
Learning management system.
Okay, so I can post my course on Canvas, or I do post my course on Canvas, and students access it. Used a lot during the pandemic, used a lot by the high school, and the state is subsidizing this purchase.
Yeah, for one more year with a grant that they have offered for the last 5 years, I believe.
And so I forget what the numbers were off the top of, so it's gonna cost $47,247. But reversible portion from e-learning is $29,616. So cost to you today is $17,630. So we had a quick debate about whether, Sean and I, Kathy and I just had a quick debate about, well, does this meet the intent of going over $25,000 or not if we're getting reimbursable? And I told Kathy, well, number one, you can't guarantee it reimbursable. But I didn't want to go down that slope of saying, oh, we didn't take it to the board because we were gonna get reimbursed, and that was gonna draw it under. So we fortunately had this meeting because I know Canvas folks would like us to give them a signed contract by July 1st. But we use this extensively to well received by most teachers, some teachers.
Yeah, we use it for our PD too. Now we're using it for some PD, and the principals are using it for information sharing as well. Another thing that to add a little bit with it, since it is the last year of their grant funds, we're lobbying for them to cover more than they did the previous years. So the gentleman at the state said that he would file for us the rest of this, so it could be covered, all of it. But you said for sure the 29 is covered under that grant. It's the rest of it was up in the air at this point.
And at this point, we're just doing 1-year contracts.
Yep, this was a 1 year. If the state doesn't do any kind of a grant next year, then it would be on the districts, and then probably be the districts and the AEAs to lobby for better pricing from Instructure under a different pricing model, which is what we would want. They wanted us to do a 3-year, but we didn't want to be locked into $40,000 every year, 3 years. So.
Do you foresee some of this, picking and choosing what you want next year if we didn't get funding and not order as many of the, what they call them, the different, there's multiple subscriptions in here.
That's possible, yeah, definitely.
One thing I would mention is that of all the stuff that we use, this is probably the most commonly thing used by my kids and my wife, and they like it. And you know, all the curriculum stuff that we do and all the other expenditures, this Canvas is kind of the they really like being able to check their grades and their status of their assignments, and as well as many of the other features that are thrown in on Canvas with their there's a lot of good features to it.
Yeah,
so I'm
agreed.
just speaking for my kids and wife, they give it a thumbs up.
Yeah.
A lot of our curriculum ties into this too. So the systems, like last month, we had an agenda item for some curriculum purchasing. A lot of that online curriculum integrates with Canvas. It's kind of why we continue to work with them. They integrate well with all the curriculum that we use.
And in the future, this nowadays, Canvas will be kind of important for that delivery of curriculum.
Absolutely, when we look at virtual learning, this would be very important for that.
And just in the sidebar, they're also using it at the community college
Well,
in the state of Iowa.
I was gonna add that. I know University of Iowa has used it, probably still uses it currently, and I would imagine that Iowa State, UNI uses it, so
Yeah.
that's just nice that we're using something that it's possible our students will go on and use at the higher ed level.
So
At least a concept.
Does the company Canvas have kind of a monopoly on the market? Is this the only company that offers this type of platform?
No, they're not monopolized, per se. They have, I would say they're the leader because they integrate with all the others. They're a little more up to, working with different vendors. Instructure actually owns the company Canvas. Canvas or Instructure then owns all these other add-on companies, that help with that integration and the different tie-ins. So like it ties in with our grant, with our power school through Grant-Wood AEA, so that the grades pass back and forth. That's been kind of a thing that we didn't have when we initially bought this, but we have added it throughout the last 8-9 years that we've had it.
And it's used K through 12.
I would say it's used heavier at the higher level, but it is utilized between.
Oh, I make a motion, we, renew our infrastructure with Canvas.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. With that, we will move on to the main purpose of our evening tonight. We're happy to welcome Tammy Drawbaugh from IASB to help us with board self-evaluation, which is a program that IASB offers to member schools. And without further ado, we'll turn it over to Tammy.
Awesome. May I join you at the table?
Please do. That
All right.
poll's too annoying if you're anywhere else.
Tammy, we didn't get off to the best start just a moment ago. I said I'm in pain. I have a pinched nerve in my neck, but if you see me sitting in an odd way like this.
Oh, my friend.
So anyway.
Okay, well, if you need to get up and move at all, if you need to, you just.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that it wasn't anything that you said or anything like that, so let's be on good terms, okay?
Well, give me time. I could maybe change that still or something. I don't know, but well, you're a sport to be here when you're not feeling well, darn it.
No, I
So,
thought of it, it's just, it is what it is.
all right. Well, you all are gonna do the heavy lifting tonight. Lucky for you, John, when I say heavy lifting, it's metaphorically speaking, not really heavy lifting. So I appreciate the invite to be here. I always tell a board when I'm invited to your district, to me, it's the equivalent of being invited into your home because it's a big deal. And I think I shared with everybody my own passion of board work. And if I'm completely honest, I do miss it. However, I don't miss the emails and I don't miss the phone calls. So I live vicariously through all of you from a board work perspective, but the work you do is so incredibly important and your district is and your community is lucky to have all of you. So you all have you have a rich history of being part of the work that was done through the state called the Lighthouse work. And you all may be really, really familiar with that. When I was a board member, I heard a lot about Lighthouse and I'm like, yeah, there must be some shining beacon, something, I don't know, it's gotta mean something with that. But the research has been recognized throughout the United States. It is not uncommon for me to be somewhere with other associations and hear the discussion around the Lighthouse work, which a lot of it was done in Iowa, but there were other states where it was done as well. You all participated in a lot of that work, and that work really then the research really became around how boards function together at the table. What are the things that boards do, and does that impact student learning? And you might guess the answer is absolutely yes. The things that happen here around your table or wherever you meet as a board also directly impacts every single classroom. And you may say, well, that's crazy. I have no idea what's happening in 4th grade math, or I don't know, 3rd grade social studies or whatever that is. But how you all work together, you set the tone, believe it or not. I had a small handful of staff that would watch board meetings. I used to tell them they should not admit that they did that. And we would, in Muscatine, we would publish, they'd be on our local cable channel. And so I would, people would say, well, I saw the board talk about this, or I saw the board talk about that. And I always thought, who's watching board meetings? But people do pay attention and they watch how well you function together. And in Muscatine, we had some years where we did not function together well and people talked about it. Which is not the conversation you want to have. So another piece of that then is evaluating, how do we work together? And what does that look like? Who evaluates the board? Let me ask you that question.
The voters. We're being evaluated by teachers, administrators, we're being evaluated, everybody, but not, we're not coming together for evaluation, but everybody's watching what we're doing.
What do you think, Cindy?
I think administrators. Voters, yes and no, but I think a lot of people vote uninformed and I see administrators that are, well, actually, probably the superintendent. I'm changing my answer, superintendent.
Okay.
There's not a formal evaluation process, but it is the board that should self-evaluate itself. And you know, if you live in an echo chamber and it's hard to kind of look at one's thoughts and ideas as being anything but correct, but you need to be realistic and take the opinions of the other members of the board. And because I certainly am not always right. And I guess the other part of the equation is my wife evaluates me as much as anything.
And is your wife a staff member as well in the district,
No.
or she's just the supporting wife?
No, she just, she's a very supportive wife, very unfortunate to be married to her, so. I used her as an example just a minute ago with the campus. You know, I listen to what she says and things like that, and she says, I like that thing way back months ago, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think the board needs to evaluate itself. We did this several years ago to try to evaluate ourselves, and you know, I guess we're here again.
I don't disagree with the fact that, especially when election time rolls around, you do feel like, well, the voters are evaluating me. They're making decisions, right? And again, they have the right to vote however they would like to vote, but I don't know if that's always, I would say, is that a true evaluation of the board? It is the board. When you come together to talk about, we hit it out of the park here, maybe we didn't hit it out of the park here. Hey, what if we did this differently next time? What would happen? And there are a lot of different ways to do that. You all chose a very formal way to do it, which I love because we get to talk through it. So God bless Tim. I probably should have brought a tree to plant in all of the printing that I asked you to do to say, here's my donation back to the school district. So you have a variety of pieces of paper in front of you. You hopefully have a packet that looks like this, except yours doesn't say family across the top. You're going to need that. So this one. This has my very top secret cell phone number on the front that you all now have. That's funny. I'm really funny. I'll cue you when you need to laugh. I live in, I have my cell phone number. I do have a number in Des Moines. I forward it to my cell phone. If you ever need to get a hold of me. I work to serve all of you, truly. My first few years, when I was a board member, I didn't really know, oh, I have a resource I really can call ISB. Call when you have questions. Or I had a board member call me today and I was on my way here and they're like, this happened, somebody I'd not met, this happened, and is this right? Is this okay? We can absolutely talk those things through. There's no cost to do that. And I love to talk to board members. So there's my contact information. All right, I'm going to pull out a couple of other things. Do you have a copy? Do you have this copy? Okay. So this, we'll level set all this paper. This is just a blank copy of the evaluation that y'all did online. So I'm giving you this in case you need to reference this tonight. All right, so that one you can kind of put to the side for right now.
We have
This-
a color.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
which is good because you have there were some other color directions so that one's important. You have this one, which you're probably dying. If you're like me, you're chomping at the bit to look at this one because it's results, but I'm gonna ask you just kind of hold that one for just a minute. Because you're gonna use that one too. And then you have this one. I sent this one, and this one says the 8 characteristics of effective school boards. It says full report. I sent this one to Tim this morning. I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot. It's one of those things as I was planning my day. I said, it's kind of big. Will you send it to the board? And I said, my hope is that y'all hang on to this one. Because this is the full report that talks about, all right, what is it that has been determined that if boards do these things, that there's such a great impact? And you're going to use this, and such a great impact, by the way, to student achievement. You're going to use this in a little bit. This is done through the National School Board Association through their research arm. So they have an arm that does nothing but research. And that was where this came from. Now, if you're like me and you have the attention span of a gnat, and I like to say it that way on purpose, which is also funny, you also have what I call the Reader's Digest version of here's the short form of the 8 traits, but I'm going to give you an assignment that you might want this. And someday you might want to spend time just reading through this. So I told Tim and Ron both, there's nothing to prepare for tonight. So if you are looking at all this going, this is a lot of paperwork and I didn't read any of it, it's okay. You didn't need to. In fact, sometimes it's better that you do it cold. So I would like you to look at your packet, which is the one with my top secret cell phone number. And let's look at page 1. And I want you to jot a couple notes. There are 2 questions that are on there. And first one is, if you have a staff member or community member who says, why in the world are you spending time doing a board self-assessment? What's the point? What would you say? I want you to jot a few things to yourself. And what are your best hopes? What do you want to come? What do you want to walk away with out of tonight's session? And there are no right or wrong answers, friends. And you just need to write enough that you can share this with your peers, because we're just going to talk about it. Yeah, eventually.
Slide those water bottles away too, you don't need to be fenced in, but it looks like someone's
Should I,
gonna
like-
block
Yeah,
your
thank
view.
you. Thank you, sir.
We don't wanna.
It's already started. You all are doing heavy lift. Let's see.
Still thing. Pencils down, eyes up.
Ron's not educated.
Well, your crabby next door neighbor, Tammy, said, Cindy, we pay you a lot of money to be a good school board member. Why in the world did we have to pay you to be there one more night? What did you do? It was a beautiful summer night. You did a what? A board what? A who? Why would you do that? Your neighbor's crabby, remember
I would
that.
say, A, it's a volunteer position.
Yeah.
And next, I think that we can all agree that we have big work ahead of us. And it's important for us to be our best. So I see this as an investment for us to identify areas of improvement and we just to improve our communication and work through collaborative conversations.
Beautifully stated. Who wants to add to that?
A lot of the same as it gives us a gauge to determine if we're effective and where we can improve.
Mm. Anything else? Beautiful.
To be effective, we need to be intentional about how we interact and how we conduct our meetings.
Yeah, they said, well,
I would just add to that, Tammy, you've got a new superintendent, so that's helpful. And I'm not gonna name the person, but I know at least one superintendent that I used to, well, still know. Had a complaint that he or she didn't feel like it was like anybody could be a board member and they're the boss of me and didn't like that idea that there's no training, there's no certification. But I would just flip that a little bit instead of having it be a complaint. I'm like, there is no training or procedure that you are required to go through to run for board. And so any kind of training or insights that you can get are helpful. And understanding that it's probably best done if it's not somebody that you're directly supervising or, it's better maybe done if you get an expert to drive up. Gosh, from south of Iowa City, that like, isn't it if you travel more than 100 miles, you're an expert, so. You're for sure.
50 miles.
Oh, 50? So she might be twice the expert.
Double expert.
Double expert, but I think there's a lot of pieces there that make sense to me as someone who looks at it from the superintendency.
I think those are all beautiful and well stated things, and I love the fact that you so carefully corrected your grouchy neighbor Tammy that it's a volunteer job. We live in the wrong states if we want to be paid. There are a few states that pay, but it is not legal to do that in the state of Iowa, which is okay. So hence why you get big raises every year, right?
Right.
Cindy, we might have talked about that before you came, Brian and I were talking, I said he's sticking around for the pay. So, and it's how you get better, right? And it's how the team works the best together. You know, the other piece that's interesting is you create this relationship between humans who you may or may not even know each other. You might not even like each other. Like that happens sometime. You know, I've had that happen. And yet you are making huge decisions. And yeah, so how do you function? How do you do that? What are your best hopes? What do you want to get out of tonight? Besides to be done on time.
Identify areas for improvement.
Okay.
so I'm looking at continued cooperation and respect. We continue to work together and as opposed to finding out thorns of things that wedge between us here.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, and so I hope that as a result, we can better understand one another's views and the process will promote mutual respect. Not to say that that is not the case, but I know in some boards, I think it is. So.
Tim, anything you want to add?
I think just kind of along the lines of having that communication and parameters, expectations for how we, I think it's easy for us to deal with the easy issues. Maybe it's when we have the parts that we don't see eye to eye on, how do we communicate that with each other effectively? I'm kind of doing a Rolodex in my mind about how other boards I've worked with, I don't want to bring those up, but when boards don't get along or have different, it can be unpleasant for everybody.
It is unpleasant. And I will share a lot about Muscatine not because we always got it right, friends, but because it's my lived experience, including when things aren't going well, you shouldn't have board meetings until 2 AM. That's not okay. Not when you start at 7 o'clock at night. That's crazy. I did that more than once. And let me tell you, the community had a lot to say, period, at that point in time, as I should have. Yeah, so when things are humming along, I always say my car's working great. Do I really have to get my oil changed? Do I really have to get but it's that maintenance, right? It's the things that we do, and to do that as a board is beautiful. All right, so we're gonna dig in. Here's what I'm gonna do, and I'm already changed, this is page 2, and I'm already changing the rules because I wasn't thinking clearly when I did this. I'm going to divide you 2, and I'm gonna divide you 2, and you may float between these 2 if you like, and then it's not to say you can't participate, I don't mean that. But sometimes you wanna be able to hear both groups, so I'm gonna let you pick what you do. I want you to take, so you all are gonna have so there are 8 traits. And by the way, you have on page 2 where it says task, about halfway through, it says quickly review your assigned traits for the short article. On page 2, it should say page 3. So if you turn the page, there is Tammy's favorite. Here's what the 8 traits are. These are the same 8 traits that you used as part of your self-assessment. So that's your really short, succinct, that captures my attention. This is the backup. This is the meat to all of that. I am going to ask you all to do traits 1 through 4. I'm going to ask you all to do 5 through 8. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at each trait, and I want you to create a little bit of an elevator speech. And what would you say? Again, it's your community member, it's your grouchy neighbor, you're stopped at the Casey's, at the Fairway, the Hy-Vee, the wherever. And you need to be able to say, yep, here's what the trait is, here's what we call it, and here's why it's really important. And you're doing it in 60 seconds or less. And if you're talking to me, because I have a really short attention span, probably even have to do it in less than 60 seconds. So what are you gonna say? So you can look at that page 3. It gives you can't read me what's on page 3 though. That's not the assignment. But what is it in your words? How would you say it in your community? So y'all are gonna do 1 through 4. Y'all are gonna do 5 through 8. I gotta keep my phone in front of me for my timer. So I'm gonna set my timer. I'm gonna give you about 12 minutes to do that. Which isn't a lot of time. But this will keep us on track. You should feel free to, I don't know how you all normally work, but if you want to spread out a little bit, you can do that. If somebody wants to work over here, because eventually you're gonna be working on flip chart paper, you're gonna need a little bit of room to work. So what questions do you have for me before I start my timer?
So at this point, we're just going through the standards, not doing anything on page 2.
Correct. On page 2, you can write your notes. On page 3, if you want to look at the abbreviated version, and the longer version is here. And you may mark this is your copy to keep. So you may mark it up, but I just want to take that step to level set to say, let's look at those traits. And by the way, y'all are going to be educating your peers on 1 through 4, and y'all are going to be educating your peers on 5 through 8.
And after 12 minutes, then we're gonna give these 30 to 60 second summaries for the 4 different traits. So we'll be speaking between 2 and 4 minutes.
You're my math guy. I know where I'm going next. All right,
At
there
the end of 12 minutes.
you go.
Okay.
Okay. And if you need less than 12, that's okay. And if you need a little more than 12, I'm all about negotiation. So, okay.
Okay.
And Tim's gonna listen to each of you while you work. And John, it's fair to tell Ron he has to move to you because
Yeah.
if you're already in a place,
Gonna ram the chair out and.
if you're already in a place where you're comfortable and you're just gonna tell Ron he has to come to you.
Yeah, he's gonna come over here. Now. You wanna move around or you wanna come forward?
And Tim, I can move too, so that you can fill them a little bit easier. Maybe I should, it's not a good direction for me too. You can sit there, you need to,
Well,
And it's all right if you want to take a few minutes and read through that first, you can do that individually, that's okay too, however y'all tackle it.
These people members, we need to tell like, proposal by with, come away from. Board meeting.
This says focused in at least two areas, student achievement and classroom instruction.
yeah,
A little bit more than that. Well, when you talked about new, you really meant it.
yeah, I mean. I'm like 11 months now, it's not like it just started.
No, but just finishing that first year, I thought that it had been just a little bit longer.
No?
Or establishing a bit of holes and a little bit lighthouse 10 years ago.
How do you wanna do it?
You were on the same page with the whole.
You wanna talk about all four, have you talked about all four, or split them up?
Achieve them, we could put always do one thing.
Yeah, 5 and 6, or even not.
Do you remember what those, like examples, what those goals were?
I remember using data. for
Yeah,
instance,
even so.
was one.
You take the odds.
We always kept going to coming back with every student can learn. We talked about that all the time. And that was really
Okay.
I think we as a board very much. Just how they do in the middle, in the low. And hopefully we could let that down.
Right.
So that's
So,
also explaining like
what I'm
specifically
looking
how
at here
student and staff are
is,
supported and how they are, how progress is being monitored.
I'll just go this forward.
What do you think?
So,
the best way to-
I was
that you're looking at monitoring
I
it
was
is
thinking
data?
about this and the monitoring of data where we have the.
Yeah. I found
School
through my time on the board,
curriculum director data.
back when Dana used to give us,
And it tells us a little bit about some
when
of the.
she was in
some
her
of the,
role of
uh,
curriculum director, maybe that's
Statistics
still
and
part
how
of
the
her
trends
new
are
role.
going for.
But just to
standardized
see
testing.
test scores
But in
from
services
like
where
K
people,
through
you know, here
12.
generally listening and you're, you know, asking.
We also watch some of those groups as they progress.
Make sure that they
and
understand,
see how they not only just grade
the board that cares about what they're asking, or what they're doing, you know, and
and
it
seeing
shows,
like
that, you
the
know.
post height of the
Our job
pandemic
as the
data,
Board of Education. not
comparing the
board
Decorah
of
data to
look best.
outside
Yeah.
districts.
So that's what I'm seeing as far as the embracing monitoring of data. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think you hit on the best example, which I thought was like the max result, where you can see patterns across grade levels or, see, well,
Believe
science
that
is
all
always,
children can learn,
lower than reading
that's
and
number 2.
whatever. So the more data you have, the more.
Other than saying it, how do you,
trends and patterns and that.
Model it.
Things that really help us.
Not maybe, that I mean, if you guys say that, I'm just curious, what it looks like an action for you as a board member. And I don't, there's no right or wrong answer, because some of that
So I know that.
is a little bit,
Sees
at the end of the
her
day,
work as being valued
guys
as
hire
opposed to coming in.
the superintendent and the administration to kind of do that work.
Sure.
I mean, we don't expect you to be going in and tutoring math.
Yeah.
And that my answer to that would be, yeah, no time. But we don't think that, high school board and the student,
Do you have anything else? I mean,
want to do that. But we as a board, we all know that, but you're right.
I mean, I'm not, that's not criticism, that's not for your day-to-day purview, but you ask the questions and guide me and the principals to, you refocus us, like, how does this help?
And I've
Decisions that we make.
able to do that the last 4 years, basically since COVID.
I don't think there's anybody in the district that I know of that doesn't have the same expectations. as the
ISB,
So I don't
better boards.
I don't know how we as a board
was something that I think we
make that
as a
happen,
board.
or how we take away from it. We don't
It's
give
just
less funding to,
circumstances the way they are.
kids that are struggling.
COVID kind of clamping down.
So I think this really comes down from you and the administration and
And the guy that been able to do it as often, but I hope we get back to that after, after.
I mean, have you ever thought that we're
Yeah,
putting more resources into different?
it goes kind of back to what I mentioned at the very beginning, if we,
not from
the opening
not from an academic
brainstorming
standpoint.
questions. So being intentional,
Um,
that when you have PD, it's not just, well, okay, we'll pick this one, but that it's all around the themes that the board feels are
Yeah, I don't
important and developing the skills and knowledge base.
we're
You
investing
need
in
to really focus on your
all
goals.
students. Like you said,
And we don't have the big spread of social and economic, groups of children is more fulfilled, or, different. In Waterloo, the more, we're.
The thing I think, from White House, whatever else,
I think that come to
what's
us,
effective is that if everyone's pushing in the same
they're
direction.
bringing from their parents.
We have a lot of people that are pushing really hard, but they're all pushing in different directions. or,
Really are,
against one another,
90%,
doesn't accomplish anything. I feel like it's been a strength for us over the years, we have worked as a team. There hasn't been, a lot of 3-2 votes, generally speaking. We're all on the same
we're
page.
a magnet
and
school for
there
special
may be
ed.
differences in
programming
needs to
here.
get there, but I think our objectives have always
And
been
we,
commonly shared.
So I see it, there's a couple of good things that we do
Well,
as our board.
our staff,
One.
our board
is
has
that
supported
we
staff
follow the chain
in
of
grant
command.
writing.
So that
for-
we're not out there
I
trying.
mean,
to
didn't
problem
Shanna
solve
Putnam
as
double write a
individuals.
grant for,
We let the administrators. do
multi-sensory
their job,
classroom.
and it
Therapeutic
comes,
classroom.
therapeutic
to us.
classroom?
Then we act as a board and Melanie Keats pounded that in my head, been very.
I don't even
First thing I walked in the door,
think of it
the
as
first thing she said was.
a
the most
financial-
valuable advice I've had.
Just decisions you make,
As a
so
school board member.
the
So I think-
recruitment and retention committee, we're meeting, and so we're talking about
So,
asynchronous
yeah,
days,
absolutely.
just kind of reviewing that, and Brian, as part of negotiations, that kind of came up, and, asked good questions about that,
8.
is, how does this fit in with high expectations of our staff, and we're saying,
Sometimes
hey, there's a day on the calendar, but if you get your work done, you don't have to come
for
in,
the superintendents.
Is that
build
the same level of
values,
PD?
commitments.
So I would argue
What
that
I'm getting. out
face to
of
face,
that
just
is
because
that
it's face to
the,
face doesn't
pretty
necessarily make it better, it just makes it face to face, obviously. Some staff engage much better face to face, but some
And.
staff can engage just fine through asynchronous, so
So we
the
have an
freedom,
opportunity then
when you guys
also to
support
be able
those
to
decisions,
talk.
then that makes it easier
If
for
there's
administration to work with
something like
teachers
middle school
to
furniture,
say, hey, we still have
we
high
can talk
expectations, even though
before it comes
some people could
into
perceive this
public
as,
setting.
so
And then-
asynchronous, so you just didn't work those 2 days?
Um,
No, we worked those 2 days, they got it done ahead of time, and actually, then our discussion today was,
you have.
Can you take a sick day from asynchronous? And you
The other thing
can't
is-
because it wasn't just 2 days, it was a whole semester to get it done. So moving forward, we just kind of set some expectations.
There's times when
So
I don't
I look at
necessarily.
that and just say, don't
come
think of it as just financial or test scores. There's lots of stuff that the board does.
Is.
In little bits of decisions that you help
The
make or you
conversation,
support recommendations that kind of
Itself around.
does help
I listen to
accomplish a lot
what
of stuff.
everybody has to say.
But at the same time, if something really sounds a little hokey and you say, well, wait a minute, you know, what are you gonna mean we're gonna forgive 10 school days, you know? That's a little too much or something.
And that's important to remember is that, you know.
If you're not close on your 4 traits, you need to be,
Okay.
although I'm hearing really great discussion.
That's.
Okay, so 3 is effective school boards are
What do you-
accountability driven, spending less time on operational
Yeah, I
issues
think-
and more time focused on
Take it back
policies
to
to improve student.
Your prior traits in terms of what I call intentionality, you know.
One thing that a lot of people think, I think, we're on
What
the
is
board is we talk about.
building shared knowledge, values and commitments.
Buildings and heat.
And
And all that.
we're all.
And I think Michael left it, not just fumble around, but talk about something that you know, direction that we're going in every time.
Right, I was just gonna say the presentation.
People connected, and
That's,
you know, it's just have an individual, but that's not.
So, yeah.
so we do let Tim and his staff do our operational stuff. And we do.
And 4 was effective school boards have a collaborative relationship with staff and the community and establish a strong communication structure to inform and engage both internal and external stakeholders in setting and achieving district goals. So we've taken steps to live stream our meetings, to make them more accessible, and post to YouTube so people can watch them at a different time.
What do we do? It's like, I'm thinking.
We have
Oh, we have
approved
been
contracting with,
years, you know, some years you do Spanish online or something.
yeah,
But we have expectations.
is that what it's called? Central School Board Communications.
They did it both Diversion and Central City. I really
don't think-
very well.
I think it's communication, well, I think we talk about the positive things that we do. We could probably get better. And
My daughter.
I'm not too good at that.
Yeah, because
Right.
Within a 3-year period. And one. Too awesome, the kids are out live, it's like, wow, this is how, well, yeah, because.
Yeah.
The opposite of the intense teacher who was really good at like to. Now it's not just highly, so it's one went from low intensity to high intensity, another one went from really high intensity down to medium intensity. It just didn't work either place very well.
Yeah.
And it's not saying that. I think the people who teach are as good as anybody who's teaching, but it's online and, you know, when your whole day is face to face and you go to one class, it's missing.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what you said here, it's not that you need to take a difference for everybody, right? And
Being a HD.
it's true. At least, you know, they really. Not a big deal.
I was kind of listening to the professor and come from that.
I was like, okay, I really love this. So, and I appreciate your comment about, it's just financial, right? Do you have your 4? Are you good? Oh, sorry, here we are talking. All right, we're gonna start numerically. What are you gonna tell me? What do I need to know? What's the elevator speech about the first trait?
Well, at Decorah Community Schools, the board has high expectations and clear goals around student achievement. And we track and measure that through our test scores. We have staff dedicated to deciding and assigning curriculum and tracking the success of that curriculum K through 12.
Okay. You all like that? Cause they just became your expert on trait number one.
I'll take your word for it. What else, how else have I gotta modify what you said?
Okay, how about trait number two?
Well, we actually believe that all children can learn. Just because someone's a high achiever versus someone's a low achiever. We don't look at them any less favorable through the teachings that we provide through our teachers and from the administration. We've done a great job, I think. We're a magnet school, if you will, for some handicapped children. And that gives us the opportunity by having other students come in that have the same problems that our kids have. It gives us the opportunity to provide a better education to not only our students, but those other students.
What was really interesting to me is in your conversation before you even got to trait number two, Brian, you made a statement about, well, we believe all students can learn at high levels. And I was like, you weren't even there yet. Which also tells me that clearly the work of Lighthouse Research and the work that you have done here in Decorah is also second nature to you. If there was a soapbox, I'll bring it out multiple times, but that piece about every single student being able to learn, it's so important. And if you as a board, if you don't believe in that, don't ask Tim to, don't ask your staff to, don't ask your teachers to, because if you as a board don't hold that, nobody else needs to. So that was a mic drop moment for me that I heard when you said that. So that was beautiful. All right. Do you like what you just learned about trait number two? I shouldn't say learned, but what you just heard, because they are now trait number one and number two experts. And hold on to your hats, because they're gonna be 3 and 4 too.
Sure, I mean, it's much of what I wrote, I think, in that initial summary of month ago, whatever it was. Yeah.
Okay. And Tim, if we're forgetting anything, you should salt and pepper it in.
Sure.
Okay. All right, trait number 3, friends, what do you say? What's your elevator speech?
We are focused on achievement. And we prove that each month, the Decorah School Board meets and invites a presentation from a school administrator or teacher to tell about a program or a learning activity that's happening in their building. And that keeps us focused on what's actually happening in the classroom and not into the granular about what's happening with buildings and facilities.
Okay. You like that?
Very succinct.
Okay. You are now an expert on trait number 3 as well, friends. How about trait number 4?
Collaboration and communication. Well, we, as Cindy well pointed out, that I will speak to that here we are having our school board meetings live and stored where they can be viewed by others. Some boards may shy away from that, and when we were asked to do it, we gave it a lot of thought and actually turned it down one time, but it came back around to it the second time and decided that it makes sense. So we don't really have anything to hide for the community, and we really want the community to know what we're doing, so that they can also reach out to us if they want to help us improve.
That's awesome. And that was a hard transition for a lot of us in the state of Iowa to make, is are we going to go, do we put ourselves on the line all the time? What does that look like? And I think we certainly saw attendance. We saw viewership spike during the pandemic. And yet, how beautiful we all have said as board members, we want our community involved. What do you think, gentlemen?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for doing traits 1 through 4. We're going to come back to that. The spotlight shifts. Tell us about trait number 5.
Yeah, trait number 5 relates to the use of data, and I think that's something that we need to focus on continually. And I think we generally have done a very good job with data. As mentioned, we have administrators that present us different testing results, primarily maps. And through that, I've always found it very easy to see trends and, in the data. For example, looking at something, science across all grades, or how did this group of kids do in second grade and then third grade and then fourth grade? So you're able to see patterns that give us insight into areas that we need to possibly focus on.
Okay. What do you think, friends? Do you like that? Okay, number 6.
6, okay, so the question summarized is how does the board use professional development to meet district goals? And just in a summary, I would say, Decorah School District attends the ISB convention, and pre-pandemic, we were very diligent about getting the Better Boardsmanship Awards. And because of that, you attend the different sessions down there and you're picking up on different ideas, and it's helpful because there's a learning curve to being on a school board. Nobody comes in, it's just like being a first-time parent. There's no owner's manual that comes with a kid, just like being on the school board. There's no owner's manual that comes with the with being on a board. You receive that training, you receive some helpful instruction from the older members of the board, but at the end of the day, there needs to be you need to be intentional about how you run your meetings, about how you develop your skills to communicate, and before, during, and after the meetings are over with, and the intentionality and the professional development go hand in hand.
Oh, I couldn't have said that any better.
Good.
What do you think, friends?
Well done.
The other piece to that is the law changes, right? I mean, I think about the things even in my own time on the board, and the law changes, the rules change, then now what do we do? And so being able to even learn from that perspective is so important. All right, number 7, team leadership.
Well, this, it's back to, I think one of the things that's important is that everyone who's involved in leadership needs to be, kind of singing from the same songbook. Not in terms of everyone shares the same opinions, but everyone is working towards common goals. I think sometimes boards can kind of evolve into, different bickering factions. But I feel like it's been a strength for us that, generally speaking, we've all been focusing on the same big picture, and that by each of us focusing on our roles, we're able to accomplish more than we could if we were working against one another.
Beautiful. You buy that? Buy what they're selling in their elevator speech? All right. So how about the very last one, team training?
Well, I think you just answered it right there. Do you have to go again?
I mean, he hit a lot of the high points. I mean, so essentially to summarize it, the question is, what are the team development and shared values that exist? And I would have to say that the pre-board meetings are really good. For us as a board, we meet on Wednesdays typically, prior to the Monday board meetings.
So a planning session?
It is. You hear the information from the superintendent so that you're not getting caught flat-footed at the board meeting, and then you're talking extemporaneously. You're pointing at me, you're
Well,
gonna say,
that's a two-way feedback loop. So then you're asking questions, or you might be saying, oh, well, there might be a data piece, and I'm just kind of learning how every board member works, but I use those meetings to kind of then, okay, what do I need to get ready between that? Because somebody might say, well, when was the last time we did the roof at the middle school, or pick whatever. If there's an agenda item like today, if we approved the Canvas learning system, if somebody said, what are the other learning systems? Why Canvas or something like that? So I'm glad they're effective for you, but they're also helpful for me to be able to kind of walk through the board meeting and kind of know where the questions are coming from, and not to monopolize time right now, but every board is different. Every board has different priorities. I would say in the best sort of way, the Dunkerton School Board if I could have talked an hour on buildings and grounds, they would have just loved it, because they were all in those line of work, and that their questions, and I don't mean this negatively, were about roofs and drainage and fields, and it was really like a buildings and ground, but you learn that that's super important to them, so. And every board has a little different focus on what's important to them, so. But
I'm a huge fan of planning sessions because for all the reasons you all just said, right? You get this great dialogue back and forth. Your superintendent knows, okay, if we have questions or here are the things that I want, which usually is then the cue to go, Tammy is not ready to vote on that. She does not have enough information. I need to get her this, and this, right? Or the board's not ready. The board's not there yet. They need more time to talk about X, Y, Z, which is a beautiful thing. Which is then when it comes time to make that vote for that $1 million building, the bond issue, the whatever it is, and all of a sudden it seems like the vote happens really fast at the table. It's not that it happened fast, it's that you were well prepared. You talked about it for 8 meetings, 6 meetings, maybe a meeting. It's also the best way to get to the place where you can all be on that same page. So that you still might not all completely agree with whatever the proposal is, but you get to the place where you say to each other, I can support this. Or now I understand why we're doing, I still don't like it, I can support it.
But I think that we as a board maybe need to be more intentional about the pieces that we want the public to hear. Because there have been many votes where it's just gone like quick, which is nice to have concise board meetings, but the pre-board meeting should not take the place of the governance and dynamic conversation that needs to happen here, just so the public can hear how we got to.
you can share some of the discourse or share some of the rationale that you've had time to think about and making a decision. Because if I'm watching that from the public, I may not know that the board's really thought about it. It could just, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've had boards where they just show up and they just vote for something and they don't, because the board president tells them to, or whatever, you know, and how does that look different than us sometimes is probably, I think, what the point you're trying to make, and so.
I think that's.
Sometimes that's tough when you think that there might be 5 people watching it, or 10 people will end up watching, you know, a recorded version of what we just went through, and maybe have 2 people in the audience. So, you know, it's kind of hard to go through a larger rationale for something when, you know, when you're doing it just to put information out there to a few people. The press is here too, so they do a pretty good job of hearing it and getting out to the public.
Sometimes even just the statement though, Cindy, what you said, right? We've talked about this, or this is when this has happened. So that your public hears somebody say that.
That's fine.
No, go ahead. I cut you off.
I'm just gonna say that, yeah, I hear exactly what you say. Having the board hear it ahead of time, though, I think reduces the amount of disagreement that happens around a board table with some that I see from other boards, and I don't know how every board operates. But sometimes when a person hears something for the first time and they want to appear authoritative, they raise their hackles and set down their heels, and this is the way it's going to be, and then they feel as if they've established their red line and are unwilling to bend from that. If you have the pre-planning ahead of time, or the pre-board meeting, you can think about it, turn it around in your head a little bit, and come back with some answers or some questions that might be a little bit better considered. That said, I would I hear and echo what you were saying, Cindy, is that sometimes I'll repeat the same darn question to Tim that I asked in the board meeting intentionally so that they could get on the public record. Our problem is, well, up until this year, is that some of the media won't pick up on much of that. They'll write a paragraph and that's what you get out of the whole darn thing. Now with YouTube and the recordings of it, there's gonna be a little bit more ability for people to go back and research what people said, and whether or not they do that, I don't know. Is that good or bad? Can you interpret things in an awkward way? I don't know, but having our 30-second elevator speech was stretched into 5 minutes is probably the best way to be for a board to communicate with the public as it comes up.
Well, the good news is you get to keep talking about that, because that's it's an important piece, right, of how you function. And as a board, how you work together. So let's get into the meat, because this is really the conversation. Let's get into the meat of what you're gonna do. And that is, so you're gonna now turn to page 4, excuse me. And here's what I would like you to do. First of all, you all did a beautiful job of, in this, in the layout of your assignment. We try to carefully guide you to say, we want you to give good feedback, we want you to give honest feedback, but to try and steer away from saying, at the last board meeting, Tim did blah, 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 blah. Poor Tim's like, what? I just got made an example of. And that you're very careful in how you all were, it was beautiful. The feedback that I read was absolutely beautiful. No one said anything specific about you, Tim. And so that was really helpful, which sometimes, by the way, is also hard to do. So what I would like you to do is I want you to start to look at this document, and not everyone provided feedback on all the questions. So those of you that provided feedback, it's listed, all right? I have a sense, when I sat in your shoes, I was able to read written feedback from board members and go, oh, I think John said that. I bet that's what Ron said. That sounds like his words. And I would tell you, resist the temptation to try and figure out who said what, and spend more time on what were the comments. And I want you to start with questions 1 through 8. So from this document, I want you to look at the questions that you were asked. And then I want you to start to really look at the comments. And you have a yellow highlighter. And you also have whatever your ink pen is. What I would encourage you to do is start to identify the comments that you see. So we're looking at questions 1 through 8. And what are the really positive things? What do you see? What are you reading that you're like, that's a strength of the board? You may analyze the data that you see as well, if that is helpful to you. But what are some key strengths that you see? Your yellow highlighter is so that looking at those same comments, that you may now highlight and say, okay, yep, this might be an area where here's where the board has an opportunity to do some future improvement, or this comment might be a little concerning to me, so I'm going to highlight it in yellow. Doesn't mean you don't like it. You might not, but it's concerning. You're looking for opportunity. And I want you to then jot some notes to yourself about question 1 and question 2, which is on page 4 of this. I'm calling it your packet of what you're kind of working out of. Okay. So you'll have this and this in front of you now. And I'm going to give you 4 or 5 minutes to kind of read through those comments and make some notes to yourself, because you're going to talk about it together. Hopefully that's clear in Mississippi Live.
Just sitting there thinking about it.
Hopefully there are markers that I'll look to see that they will. My timer goes off, you'll hear the duck. But what is- I do work for those questions 1 and 2, by the way. I want you to be and you're looking at questions 1 through 8. I want you to be identifying the traits as well. So I said, look at your comments, and I want you to do that. But as you look through those comments, that number, especially identifying what are the traits? What do you feel which traits do you see the most positive or hopeful things? Which are the traits that you see? Yeah, you know what? Here's where we're gonna have some opportunity to really dig in. And there are no right or wrong answers. By the way, you can look at this a couple of different ways. So You gotten to work through the comments? The place where you feel good about making some first pass mental notes? All right. Now I'm gonna put you in teams again, but I'm gonna mix it up. So I'm gonna have Ron and Cindy trade places. So Ron, you and Brian are gonna work together. Cindy, you and John are gonna work together this time, okay? And what I want you to do, so take your notes, because you're gonna need those. And you're gonna turn to page 5. You're gonna share with your partner, and Tim's gonna probably jump between the two groups. Because you can absolutely, by the way, give input of what you saw as well, but I'm gonna guess you're trying to hear all your board members at once. I want you to share with each other, here's where I think we're knocking it out of the park. Here's what I highlighted in blue, right? Talk about that. Talk about the trait. What is the trait or the traits? You might have 2, you might have 3, you might have 8, but what are the traits? What did you look at your data and say, here's where I think we're doing really, really well as a board? And then after you share those out, then collectively pick 2. Collectively as a group, what are the 2? And you're gonna have flip chart paper, just over here, and I'll bring that over to you. And I want you to chart those 2 traits out. So you can write them by numbers, if you want, from the 8 traits, or if you want to write, 1, and you start to write data enough so that we know, oh yeah, that's data set, we got it. But collectively then, the 2 of you will need to decide out of the 4 or 5 that you each have, what are your 2 key that are the most important? You're gonna do the same thing for where you see, we call it potential future action. And by the way, this does not mean bad. This means as a board, what did you pick? What did you say? Here's what we really need to focus on. What does that look like? So share that with each other, and then again, collectively decide, what do we think it should be? Because you might guess, each group will then share with each other. Okay, so this gives you a chance to kind of get a sense of how much or how little are you thinking alike? Neither is wrong, by the way. All right, so Cindy will come over to John only because, or John.
I'm grumpy.
His words, not mine, by the way. And Brian and Ron, you 2 will work together on this one, all right? And I'm gonna bring you all some flip chart paper because you're gonna need it. And you can use your blue markers for that. And I've got this double, triple so that it'll not bleed through.
Yeah, I wonder if the blue will lead through it.
Dry erase.
Yeah. I'm gonna go see what I can. Yeah, I'm gonna go rustle up. I don't want.
I could use one either, but
Yeah.
and if you'd rather write on the pen, you can do that. And we're eventually gonna put these up around the room. Y'all can start by talking to each other about what you put. Moving pen right out of the way.
This is my repeated 3rd grade moment where I couldn't write straight lines and cut in.
Spelling does not count, doesn't matter, stuff straight.
Okay.
I'm gonna put your tape down here, because you'll eventually, or tape and stuff to us.
And I didn't write down a lot of it. Crazy because I was digest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Over here.
So,
I didn't look so much at the trades either, but
yeah,
but we kind of talked through the trades before.
Yeah, the ones as far as, years ago, I expectation and this so big, I need to. I'll break down what I.
And each trait is listed at the top where the question is, so it says, So it says Q1, and that's your trait that's listed there, if that's helpful. And if you need to pull your packet apart, so that little one pager of the 8 traits sits out separate, however is easiest for you all to work.
So I guess I don't know exactly what we're doing there. Are we supposed to, I've highlighted the things that are using and the ones that I think are supportive and so on, and then the traits are here and how we put the.
So
on the paper.
So I went, if you've not had a chance to do this individually, based on after reading your comments and looking a little bit at this graph work, where do you see as a board, where are you really excelling? Pick those. You probably are gonna pick 2 or 3 of those traits individually. You're also then gonna do the same thing and say, okay, here's probably where I see. It doesn't mean that you're not doing well in it, by the way, but here's where we still need to focus. Or this is an area of concern to me, but I want you to independently have a few minutes to pick those, to select what those traits are, no right or wrong answers. Then I want you to share them with each other. So if you've not had a chance to do that, go ahead and take a few minutes to do that. So in your mind, you have on those 8 traits, what does that, where are the places based on what you're reading that as a board you've said, we did pretty okay on that? And where are the places that you read and you said, you know what, there's still work to be done here. And what are those traits?
What's one thing that you thought Decorah was good at? Or the board was good at?
Yeah. And, you know, like fairly things to do. We talk about things earlier, and probably. To do that and things like that.
Well, I think that we are best in high expectations and clear goals and focused on achievement based on the data that we're tracking, the way that we use our board meeting time monthly. For graduation rate.
Choose something else.
I think the best thing that our board does is we listen to each other.
Mhm.
And that, I come in to meetings and sometimes have ideas that I'll either have privately or sometimes share. And as
Between 1 and 3, I feel like it's really better.
I listen to what people are saying, and I'm not so proud that it's just my opinion. And I really value and respect what everyone here is saying. And I'm not in it to win an argument. I'm here to do what's best for the kids. And sometimes, it's clear black and white, but most of the time it's okay and gray in the middle. So I think that's what our board does well. And I say listens to one another. Definitely. But I don't know exactly how we summarize a lot of things. Right, we're supposed to go to the cons, do that one, do the. Do I want something that I'm so agree to me.
Your bar graph may also give you some indication if that's a helpful tool to use of, again, of the assessment of what you took of your survey regarding your 8 traits. You all ranked and you did all complete it. That will give, I think that will give you a little bit of a starting place as well. And John, you just had a whole bunch of really great things. So thinking about kind of some of those pieces of what you had, where do those fit into your traits? and then take a look at that particular trait and see, how did you all score yourselves on that?
Yeah.
It didn't.
It didn't.
So then in the areas of improvement. Well. Speaking for my own personal, and before you write this down.
Ray, you've got
Speaking for my own personal.
three middle, too high versus two middle.
Experience, it's a matter of knowing when. to Stop. And sharing your thoughts a little bit and, sometimes I do it okay, and other times I keep talking and I wish I would have. In my statement earlier, because sometimes. We say the same things, just using different words, and so that it ends conversation a little bit, we be concise.
The other one. What's the topic?
I think that communication was the area that I thought we could improve with communication for our community.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that were in here having the high expectation and critical. That we don't have written goals. That's probably starting on that one. And then, I see here one to do a better job with the staff than with the community, and then, another person down here says regular communication with administrative staff as well as families. Little conflict there, I guess. But yeah, if we're trying to communicate with a family, maybe that's something that we have, right? Something.
Well, I'm either really late or I'm too early.
We don't have written goals.
You're driving back.
Yeah, I debated and I'm like, no, I'm like.
I do, I think I have. We should see, but we don't have.
Yeah.
Trying to follow what.
And really, once I got. It's really, I mean, it's just about an hour. It's just that it's
Or
one from here to 380, and then once I'm on 380, it's
Okay.
pretty long.
Must be doing for that, so you say.
45 minutes.
Okay.
Not bad. So that's.
so another strength,
That's always my, I can go through Coralville and Sabacasso and get gas.
I think
or
either
can
high
make my-
expectations or maybe focused
And I
on
said, my
achievement.
husband and I were talking about this, today. I'm like, I'm like. I'm like, "Oh, there's nothing, right?" I said, no. my
Or maybe it's data savvy. I want to, I think that our school district has a strength of identifying.
Yeah.
Student.
Deer won't be out.
Yeah.
What did you
And
find is,
Leadership, it doesn't mean that
After.
not going well.
Everything has to move on.
I was just gonna say, be careful, but West Virginia, Fayette, I think it's right.
I hope. Ew.
I think West Virginia's a Norway staff, and I think Fayette is
Examples of some of those.
right by the hotel.
It gets back to the idea.
On the other side of the road.
When you come into town and it, because it says, but I was like, oh, I know it literally. So, yeah, otherwise.
And once again, you have this high grad, all this talk about the high graduation.
Which hardly ever. This is a really good reminder for me, because for whatever reason, this
That's what
book
everybody
weighs
else-
more than this one does.
I was just gonna say, I don't even need to see the photo reports, because I'm not speeding like other people that I know.
Yeah, my husband was like, "Hey, it's not season." I can just get a little bit.
Looking at something.
So the hill you
Pools.
on that drive,
We have.
probably the place that the worst for cell reception is in the valley.
Other than saying the same thing.
So you went down a big hill.
Across the beautiful little bridge, I can see the tires going.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, so
Yeah, I don't know, I think probably.
that's fake Decorah, because when you're going to Decorah, you feel like you're coming to
Oh,
Decorah, but
yeah.
it's not, it's Eldorado.
Yeah,
You know,
On the-
so.
then you kind of let levels out, and then after a while, you actually go. So you'll come back to the other direction, you'll see across the bridge, you'll see the town.
Sure, it's always been
Yeah.
done by.
If you have time and you're so inclined, it's good to come in, right? You pull in there, there's a porta potty, but there's a beautiful view of the valley.
yeah.
Is, yeah, very nice little scenic overlook.
No.
So,
Are we
I
in
don't know what the county park is, because I saw
Other
it.
schools.
it's just a little, and my work, I like to stop there, because like, I don't have to buy gas, I can just run over to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And then, but the view is beautiful, just.
Oh, and I always like to see, that is one thing I really enjoy about driving around the state, is being able to see.
I mean, honestly, you should just drive around the court for an hour and look at all the stuff. You can look over the city.
I know my husband was thinking, why didn't you leave earlier, so you can go check out all these great camping places,
Should I go
so
back
I
and do
did,
it?
I was in,
That one up there.
Lake Bridge, in that Alcator area,
So,
not too over to.
computer glasses that are,
Yeah.
Wow.
that aren't like.
Did you guys do
28 inches.
fifth wheel camping?
We do RV camping, so I have an ice maker and
Yeah.
Okay.
I did, we do not rock it.
I'm using the
Okay.
bottom centimeter of.
But RV, you're not like living, you're not, van life.
So what I'm.
No, that's gonna be a little too small for us, although it's also, I mean, I would never drive. I would never drive that thing, like,
No, that
You should learn
position
how
is
to,
only
like,
been the last
Yeah.
month,
nope,
but,
way too big for me.
A while.
Happy to use it.
Craned my neck,
Yeah.
it's finally catching up.
Will
So
never
I
drive.
apologize if I'm.
Campground here in town is really popular with people. And
Better than.
just kind of cracks me up, because it's
You know.
not, I mean, it's by the river, but it's not.
I was up there doing
Considered
all the
scenic
smoking.
place in town, but there's a lot
Where
of
was the
people who.
attraction?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's your, like, it's the city rented.
So,
Just come to town.
What I would say is
Park
this
your
all students
RV
can
and
learn.
They do bike ride around to wherever.
Is.
Yeah, it is absolutely.
Some of the
There's,
unknowns.
there,
Somewhat
the rock
unknown because of
formation,
the
I
change
think
of state
that's all.
laws.
I-
And, the.
All right, y'all, did you get your two? Did you agree on two?
the new.
Well, we kind of had a 1A and 1B.
You know,
Because the two are
expanding.
kind of mirror image in our estimation.
Oh, okay.
Social programming and.
Look at you, even did it in your blue and yellow.
I don't,
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a good answer for you here.
Maybe that would be in. Maybe leadership, just.
Oh, I was just working off of the same one that, so you. What you're the. Dependency or something like that.
You good on your two? Team? Yeah. Okay. Were your answers dramatically different from each other? When you worked together?
No,
No. I don't think so.
No, no, it's just one of those things where I think we've been together as a board for a while. Cindy's the newest, but she's integrates right in there. And, as I was telling Cindy, I think one of our strengths is, listening to one another. There's not an ego in this room that says I need to be, alpha of the pack. And, so we're in the team leadership that is our strength. We've got listening and being open-minded is a couple of what I see our strengths.
Okay. Ron, you want to show the two you came up with?
Well, we could narrow it down to just two on the strength, so we have. As item one, a combination of focused on achievement and high expectations and clear goals, which we felt wasn't cheating because those are kind of the same thing. So we hit those as 1A and 1B. And as a secondary or tertiary, however you have to look at it, a belief that all children can learn.
We had that one too. And John talked about high participation in, like, for example, our middle school, I think, is maybe the largest outlier of like having all students involved in the 6th grade operetta, whether they are a performer or a behind the scenes helper or planner. And then we have a high graduation rate, which I think is also very inclusive of all students learning.
Okay.
And meeting goals.
I'll just add to that, and it's kind of been alluded to when you were with Brian, in the sense that we're almost a little bit of a magnet school for special ed populations. We do, I'm learning, have better success with students with IEPs that come to us from other districts, that feel better about the school experience and stay in school. Which I'm not going to elaborate to, but on a personal level, but that was kind of a new learning for me, was just kind of finding out that there's some students that maybe they go to Crossroads because they're not able to be at the district they're at, and then they get integrated back to our high school, and that goes really well. And of course, it's easier to go to a place where you feel welcomed or invited than a place you don't feel welcomed or invited. So we probably don't stress that as much as we could, but that's a nice attribute for our school district to have, whether it shows up on test scores or graduation rates, or it's just something we know about ourselves.
Good to hear.
Yeah,
I think it probably does, it is reflected in graduation rates. If people are happy with their school experience, they'll stick it out.
Yeah, I can't tell you all of them reflected our graduation rates, or giving credit for, the district that sent the child if they're on IEP. But either way, I mean, that's maybe one of those soft skills. Would you rather your children went to a school district that was inclusive of people who are different and they feel welcome, or wasn't? And so the easy answer is yeah. But whether or not it shows up on rates, it's just nice to know about your district. So
It's a really important piece to talk about, because we know every single thing you do you can't measure everything. You just can't, right?
Oh.
How do you measure how do you measure all students taking part in, if you had some sort of opera performance, which, by the way, as someone who just has a opera performance graduate from college. I love hearing that in 6th grade, right? Already, he was never exposed to that in 6th grade, which is fact. But how do you test on that? Well, you can't, right? But it's still an important piece of data for you all to be talking about, or it's an important point to be talking about. So you all ended up with trait number 2, belief that all children can learn. Is that true?
Yes,
And number 1 is.
the combination of focused on achievement and high expectations and clear goals.
So you can only pick 2. Which 2 are you picking?
The first two,
So you're gonna do
1A and 1B.
high,
High expectations and clear goals and focused on achievement.
okay. So you're picking trait number 1 and trait number 3 on that 8
Right.
traits. Y'all are testing my math skills. If I have to add, John's lucky I can see my toes to still count. You all have. All students can learn, what trait would you attribute that to?
2.
Okay, that was not a trick question. I just didn't want to answer it on your behalf. That was what I was assuming. And your team leadership. Well,
7.
okay, so. You all have 1 and 3, you all have 2 and 7. They're all beautiful traits. My question is, if you look at your data in what's in your packet on those 4 traits now, what would you rank collectively? What would you pick? If you could only pick 3, what would you pick? So you picked 1, 2, 3, and 7. Did I hear that right?
Mhm.
Is it important that we all agree? Or what is the,
What do you all tell me about that? Is it important you all agree? On this, you're talking about what have you done? Where you're talking about where are your areas of, hey, we're doing this really well. So if you're out in the community, is it important you all say, yeah, we're doing everything well. Here's where we really shine. Do you think you need to be able to?
Well, I think it's important that there isn't a number 1 that somebody says, no, I don't support that. But I don't think that's the case. I think everyone shares the same, so it becomes less important what's number 1 and what's number 4.
Well, here's the interesting part, and I'm skipping ahead, right? But it kind of might make a little bit of a difference. We picked number 7 as one of our less lower strengths.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's bookmark that. Is it important? We all agree. And by the way, I'm saying 1, 2, 3, and 7 because I'm giving the numeric value of the trait. Okay, not ranking anybody's trait. So let's go look at the opposite because Brian has a really good point. So let's talk about what did you come up with for your areas of improvement? And Brian, Ron, do you want to share first this time? And I shouldn't say areas of improvement. Where are the places that potentially, this part I'm going to tell you, you do need to agree on. This will be important because this is where do you want to lean into? And just because you really want to lean into it next year, doesn't mean you aren't hitting it out of the park, by the way. So.
Yeah, we had as our first ranked weakness, which is primarily just because of the balance of where the rankings were. Not that we saw it as a weakness, but the team leadership. There was one comment that had it at a 2, which talked about how this is a continuing process. I think that was a good way of summarizing it because it's recognizing this is something that we want to focus on primarily because we have a new superintendent. So the communication back and forth amongst the team is something that will grow, exponentially. So that was something that we looked at as maybe not a weakness, but something that is going to get better.
Yeah, and it's not a reflection on Tim, or it's not a reflection on any administration. We weren't talking about that whatsoever at all. All we're talking about is that we've had 3 superintendents within X number of years. And the continuity it's a learning process for Tim. He didn't know what his predecessor did, and it's so as Tim said, I don't know what's going on with the school project. I didn't really know you guys had already talked about that. We struggle to find negative things because if you look through the whole thing, there aren't many. But if you look at it, if we were working with Tim for 10 straight years, you know, Tim would know exactly more what we're feeling, and you're still feeling out as a board members, right?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so that's,
You were still getting to know each other.
yeah, that's,
quite
yeah,
frankly.
absolutely, yeah, we haven't been married for very long.
Yeah. Yeah,
We're not saying it's a bad way, but it's just that it's what's thrown at us, and we're all learning.
and I want to emphasize a couple things that you said. I read through your packet, I scoured through it, and I try and think about how would I answer, I try and predict some of your answers before I come, and I struggled, because it's all really good. And you all are pretty insane, there's not any, it's beautiful, that's what it is, there's not anything dramatically, you don't have any big swings, you don't have any, so that's really important, that was a really important statement you made, there's really great things. And I also love the fact about if you're saying, hey, yep, we picked team leadership because we're still figuring each other out, there's also absolutely nothing wrong with that. It is not a reflection on anyone's performance, right? It is absolutely, we have a new relationship. So that's really important.
We also had leadership, but from a perspective of changing laws, where so much has changed in such a short amount of time
I'm
that,
not taking the fall for all of that.
well, and it's
That's
just,
somebody else's doing.
right, but that affects leadership.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And it affects sometimes when the law changes so quickly, or even you think the law might change and we don't know, but we anticipate and we think it might, and then we don't know, and then it goes back and it goes. We all watched that yo-yo happen a couple years ago. Yes, we're gonna go this one direction. No, we're not. Yes, we are. No, we're not. And it was right around the holiday time and we were all like, what are we gonna do? And that's really hard, and it takes your focus away from the things you really want to spend time on. I want to look at the data mapping. I want to hear about the new program at the middle school. I want to hear about, and not that the law is not important, but when you have to focus on that, right? Those are sometimes some of the things that pull our attention away. So I think that's really important too. What did you have? What was your second one?
Collaboration and communication.
So number 4, right? Okay. Do you want to tell us why you picked that? Or how you both agreed on that?
And primarily from looking at, the bar chart, this is one that was not a strength as far across the board.
You had a little bit more spread.
Yeah,
Thinking that we may be able to be better communicators with the public,
Yeah.
I think, rather than, there's things that happen in the school district that the community might not know, and the media might be here and they hear something, and they put just something a little in there that was just a small piece of what we really want the public to know. But there's some things that are really important for the public to realize you spend a lot of time and energy and make some good decisions. And we probably could do a better job of getting that out to the community.
I think it's unfortunately all too easy to think, well, we've talked about this before, we know what we're thinking, but well, that was 8 years ago and most people weren't paying attention back then. So it's very important to communicate things that are old hat to us.
And sometimes when you all talk about it 8 times, or what feels like
Yeah.
8 times, right? You're like, well, doesn't everybody know?
We're with the flip side of that, Tim is probably a better communicator than any other superintendent we've had. He communicates very well to us in his thoughts and some ideas.
It's a lovely compliment.
Yeah, for sure.
And how about you all? So you had leadership, and how about?
We also said communication. And just with community communication, I know that thinking through the last 6 months, there's been several times where an article was posted on Decorah News that we then replied to, and I would hope that as we move into different work and different projects, that we can be more proactive with putting out press releases or information to the community rather than reactive.
Yeah,
I don't like being reactive.
yeah.
So do you agree that your areas of improvement or where you really want to lean into, because areas of improvement still sounds like you're not doing it well. But maybe where you want to keep working is trait number 4 and trait number 7. So collaboration and communication and team leadership. Because to Brian's point, spoiler alert, if we look ahead, that's a really important one where you all say, and if those are your 2 areas that you all agree on, that you really want to start to lean into, as you start to do some goal setting for the coming year, that'll also play into what that piece looks like. Now I'm gonna go back to Cindy's question though. So do we really have to agree on all the strengths? Y'all you had 4 things you picked, right? We said 1, 2, 3, and 7. Is that right? Did I say that right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Now, interesting, you have 7 on both sides of your list,
Mhm.
which is also okay. Because you're also recognizing some of the great statements Brian made about what you're doing with your leadership, but you're also saying you still have room to grow, which I also think is really healthy. All right, let's double check your work a little bit. Here's what I want you to do next. And you can do this together. If you flip your page to page 6 in your packet, your kind of workbook packet. And if you poke ahead, and I saw some of you were anxious to look at the bar chart. Let's look at page, now these are in reverse order. I want you to look at question number 10, which happens to be on page 10 of the bar chart of your data. So stay on page 6 of your packet. This is a real test of my skills to see how good I am at giving direction. But what I want you to look at is question number 10. And that question said, think about the next 12 months. This is what you were asked. Think about the next 12 months and pick a couple of traits. Where do you think it would be most valuable for your board to focus next? So page 10 shows you what all your answers were, and you have some comments that were given, and I've included those. Just take a minute, look through that. What do you see? On page 10, what are the 2 that y'all picked that you said in the next 12 months, here's where it's most valuable for the board to spend time?
Well, number 4, collaboration and communication validates what we just talked about.
Yep. And what's the other one?
You know, goals and resource alignment, which is the second highest, but there's only 2 responses for it. I don't know how you weight that.
Well, and you have a lot of spread, right? So you have a lot of 1, so you have a lot of people who the 1 is just one person said, right? So you had 2 people who said, we gotta make sure our goals and our resources are aligned. Which isn't a bad thing. You have some different choices in what people said, here's what I think we need to focus on. You all are gonna have to decide, okay, well, what does that really look like? But that number 4, I'm hearing that as a common theme, right? Multiple places I'm hearing collaboration and communication is important to us. So we either need to keep working on it or we need to do more of it, which is beautiful. All right, let's look at, so then let's go backwards. Let's look at page 9 for question number 9. So each of you were asked, what do you believe are the 3 most important traits? So where are the 3 traits that you really want to focus on? So take just a minute, look at that data, read the comments that were given. For the three most important traits.
1, 2, and 3.
Based on all your other conversations tonight. What do you,
Consistent. Those were the 3 things that we had listed.
so when Cindy says, is it important we all agree, which is a great question. And then Brian says, okay, well, can we look ahead a little bit, right? Y'all kind of just walked yourself through this beautiful path of. I would say you are in a pretty strong agreement of. What are the things we're doing really well, because they're also really important to you. And where do we want to keep leaning into? It's beautiful, friends, when it works out this way, and this is a gift. Doesn't happen this way with every board. Trust me, it does not happen this
If it
way.
did, you wouldn't have a job.
That part is so true. All right. So you have one more activity before I cut you loose for the night. I actually would ask you to do 3 things, but one that's hard. The other 2 are super easy, so they don't really count, and then I'm getting you out of here. Here's what I want you to do. Do you agree on the areas you really want to lean into for this year? So yours are in yellow, yours are on the right side of your paper. Do you all agree on trait number 4 and trait number 7? And you don't have to agree for my sake, but you do have to come to some kind of consensus.
When you say lean into, I look at number 4, not as something that we need to lean into, because what we were really saying is it's something that's gonna happen just because of the newness of the board superintendent team. So it's not something we have to really try extra hard at. It's just something that's gonna be a strength. So that I would go back to the communication one, because that's one that will only happen if we really focus on it.
So that collaboration and communication.
I think you said 4, but you meant 7, team leadership, right? Which is something we don't have to lean on because it's gonna happen.
Okay.
Over time.
Yeah, all right, team leadership.
And maybe lean into is also not, you all should decide what the verb is, because it can also be, maybe we just need to be aware. Maybe we just need to give ourselves some grace that we're also, I haven't heard anything that says you're not communicating well. In fact, Brian, you just said Brian to yourself. Brian, you just said to Tim, hey, we have great communication from you all, which is beautiful. Maybe though that piece is simply, we have to give ourselves grace and time to continue to foster that relationship. That's okay. How you all view that is up to you. What you are looking to do before I leave tonight is say, if we're going to focus on a couple of these 8 traits, where do we want to put our time and energy in the coming year? And based on not just picking which one we like, but also based on your conversations that you've had and based on what the data is that you got from your survey that you all did. So you can negotiate that out if you don't want number 7 on there. And I will tell you, when you all said areas of improvement, y'all were pretty solid, right? You said, no, that leadership piece, and you said communication and collaboration. And if you want to swap one of those out for something else, I'm completely okay with that. I just need to know that y'all have a plan before I walk out the door, because that's my responsibility to you.
What was your second one?
Leadership, and we said changing
Yeah.
laws.
Yeah.
Just staying.
Is that leadership from the legislature?
How will we respond to the laws that are changing? So,
How we respond, okay.
yeah. Cause the bathroom thing, the books that are in the library, the
Requirements to have lesson plans documented.
the parental choice, all these things that are coming at us from the legislature and how we have to respond. Equitably, I guess,
And really, those things that are coming down that we know have happened are happening inside our buildings without much discussion at the board table. Right? Have we really had that much, had much
Right.
conversation about it?
It's not up to, yeah, they're not asking the board. It's more like the board is being informed on what our
Yeah.
administrators
Yeah.
are
Legally.
doing quickly, having to do.
Which is how
And
it needs to be.
And well, and among other things, because there's not a lot of gray area there, there's not a lot of room for interpretation on some of these laws, so,
Right.
you know, it's just. This is how we're,
I think that the administration has to act accordingly, but there are things that, you know, the board has to do to be able to support the administrators in their efforts. And try to also support the teachers who feel like they're being attacked. And, you know, some of the salary negotiations and so trying to be, empathetic for their, some of their non-monetary requests, if we can accommodate those, so they feel like they're, full participants in the process. It's, you know, there's. Right now, I think there's a lot of stress in the teaching profession, and the board that needs to support the faculty as we're able. And some of that stress is originating in Des Moines in the legislature. So, I mean, no, we don't have a lot of say in how the laws are written or how they're enforced and so like that, but there may be some ancillary structures that we could participate in.
Mhm.
That's what I have to say.
Would there be one of your traits from your strength area that you would want to say, no, we want to commit to this, that we're going to, I'm still going to use the word lean in, doesn't mean you aren't doing really well, but we want to keep focusing. We don't want to lose sight of this.
Well, any of the strengths that were listed, I think are things that we should reaffirm and want to lean into, you know, even though they're strengths, that's why they're strengths, because they're so important. So I would lean into all of them because that's essentially what we've been doing. So it's just continuing the emphasis that we've always placed on those things.
Let's look at your communication and collaboration, because that's one that you both have that you agree on that I think you feel okay about. Is that a fair statement? If I say that you feel good about saying, let's talk about what else we can do in the way of collaboration and communication. Okay, so I want you to look at page 7 of your packet that you're writing in and working out of. And it says trait reflection questions. So the top, I want you to write, it's trait number 4, it's collaboration and communication. Tell me a little bit about how does that trait help contribute to the district making a difference for students? that particular trait is one of them that you had a little bit wider spread on than some of your other traits. Not huge, but you had a bigger spread than you did some of your other ones. So what would it take? I want you to be thinking about this. What would it take for the team to rank that as a 3 or a 4? And not just the person who might have given it a 2 to go, okay, I'm moving my score, I'll give it a 3 or I'll give it a 4, but what are the things? What would you all see? As a board, what are the things that you could think about doing? Things that you most likely would hear and see at the board table. And I heard some really good, very simple and straightforward suggestions tonight. And I want you to jot a couple of those down in the left side of that T chart. Communication and collaboration, how does that make a difference for students? What is the direct impact for students? Tell me some of your thoughts.
I think it's more of a process goal than a substantive goal. It's not the one thing that directly is going to make the biggest impact for students. But nothing else gets done as effectively if you don't have communication. So it's kind of the ultimate tool.
I think communication directly impacts students because the way that their parents are talking about school and the information that the parents receive and how they are articulating that in their household directly affects students. So I'm thinking specifically about an upcoming school bond and I want us to be able to meet our voters where they're at and listening to different perceptions than what's within our staff and board and communicate those in a consistent way that all stakeholders have access to the same information.
Hopefully, our staff that are affected by, or really not so much affected by a new school, because that's part of the communication that we need to get out right now. It's real important for us. If there's negative communication that goes to parents from students, you know, it can actually go both directions.
Yeah.
And communicates change in law that if your bond doesn't pass the first time around, you don't just get a, there's now, the law now says, here's when we get to do it again. Which is ironic when you all brought that up about changes in law. That's a great example. Bond is a great example. And it's a great example talking about who's telling your narrative. Because we know our kids sometimes are. I know what my high school kids brought home to me when I was on the board, and it wasn't always sunshine and roses, right? It wasn't always accurate either, but I know how that goes. those aren't rocket science thoughts on pieces of communication, but they are great examples of here's some things the board can do. Your language at the board table, I sense you have no issues with this, but your language at the board table is another really, really important piece. The words you use, how positive that you choose to be with still getting across direct message if you need to, but those are really, really important pieces of communication and collaboration. And remember, your tone sets it for the rest of the district. So what happens here, your conversations and how your conversations happen, they absolutely matter. Cindy, you worked ahead. She was like working on both sides of her sheet. Are you willing to share what it might look like on your T-chart? Or maybe you were just writing extra big notes. She's just filling up the page. I look at this on your superintendent side. Did you fill that out? Will you share? So the other side of the T-chart, it was a beautiful thing. It worked head, by the way. Said, okay, so what's the key work of the superintendent? What could that look like?
Well, I kind of already said it. Consider all opinions, meet the public where they are, and have consistent and accessible updates.
So not dramatically different. You could apply those on both sides, right? Of what the board is doing as
Well, the
well.
board, I think that what the board needs to do is be listening to the public and then bring those public perceptions back to the superintendent.
So again, not rocket science pieces, right? When you think about the work of what you need to do, it doesn't have to be brand new, gigantic pieces, but you do have to agree on what do those things look like. And using a bond referendum is a great place to start if that's anything that's on your horizon. I'm leaving you with some homework. So I think you've agreed. Collaboration and communication is a place that you want to focus. You need to pick a second trait. You need to pick a second trait only because all 8 are great, but where do you want to focus as a board? That focus will then help you as you look to Tim and say, let's talk about goals for next year, because I'm going to guess, based on something Cindy said, that you know what? A bond referendum might be a great goal. And when y'all are ready to do goal setting, how you tackle that is up to you. I'm a big fan of saying board goal, district goal, it's one and the same. And you may even say, Tim, it's a superintendent goal as well. The pieces that you each are responsible for under that look different. If you said collectively, this team, because I think of the board and the superintendent as a team together, we're going to have a goal that says we're going to focus on the financial health of our district. And specifically under that, the board says we want to tackle bond referendum. Tim will have very specific pieces that what that will look like that the board won't be doing, right? Except supporting that, but the board's going to be putting forth a great message. It gives you all a place to start talking about those conversations. But your work that you do with 8 traits will help guide what that looks like. And maybe you won't pick financial health for a goal, and maybe it won't be a bond referendum. But I would encourage you to take, and maybe you do it at your next work session, take some more time and talk about what do we want that other trait, what would that look like? You have a blank T-chart, so you can kind of craft out some of that information as well on what's the board's work look like and what would the superintendent's work look like. If he likes hey, here's what we think it looks like on the superintendent side, are we close? Which, by the way, will we be close on Cindy's example on the superintendent side of what she had?
Would be close, sure.
Okay. Does that piece make sense? Okay. You've given me a hard 2 hours, plus you had a little bit of board business. Here's what I would like you to do. In the next 2 things, so I gave you an envelope. and I gave you this piece of paper. I'd like you to address the envelope to yourself. This piece of paper has on this side, it says, what must I do? And I want you to jot a quick letter to yourself down here. 30 days. What do you want as a board member? What do you want to focus on for yourself in the next 30 days? What do you want to commit to doing in the next 30 days? Maybe you're going to commit to saying, I'm going to ask Ron if we can have it on the agenda. We're going to finish out that last trait. Or maybe it's going to be, I want to work on my own communication with the team. I want to keep doing the amazing things we're doing. You're going to fold that letter up. You're going to stick it in that envelope that you just addressed to yourself. You're going to seal it, because I'm not going to read it. You're going to give it to me. And because I can't pop out of your mailbox in 30 days, don't make mailboxes that big. It's your own check-in with yourself. You did professional development. What do you want to do with the conversations you had tonight? So I will mail it to you in about 30 days. And you'll say, why do I have this letter from myself? What is this about? On the back side of that letter is just a little infomercial on what these beautiful plaques on your wall are over here about earning your Better Board award as a team. And it talks about the point value. We have just recently made that process a little bit easier. We've credited it to hours. So tonight, you've all earned 2 hours because we spent 2 hours together. And I believe there's an additional hour for doing the self-assessment. Ron, that puts you over the top. You will have your individual award because I think you were sitting at 10 hours as of this year. So, and you need 12 to get to the top.
Just looking at hours spent, Rosini will be way.
Oh, it's 15 hours. Thank you. That's what I get if I haven't talked about it in a while. You are almost there, Ron. And you know, we used to also do hours for a variety of service projects, and we're only focusing on learning. I shouldn't say only, we're really putting a heavy focus on that. And we equated that a little bit differently so that the seat time would reflect the actual hours. 100 years ago, Brian, you might remember this. Yeah, feels like you used to have like 200 credits. And Ron, you probably remember this too, but I always felt like I'm never gonna make it. I'm never gonna get there. And one of the things we did is looked at just how do we simplify this? How do we make it a little bit easier and focus on learning?
We attended a lot of sessions in Monona. Or the school districts, we would host them here and they were always.
Yep.
Remote.
And we will be what I so lovingly call back on the road this winter. COVID dramatically changed a lot of that. I think John had mentioned that as well. Since it is an election year and we know that we will have a lot of new board members to onboard. You all will have a lot of throughout the state, there will be a lot of new members. We will have an onboarding opportunity at convention, which is November 16th. That's not on your calendar. There'll be lots of things you can do, but that'll be one opportunity. And then we will be traveling around the state again to do those sessions. And I'm trying to remember where we're going in your part of the world. And I don't remember what district we ended up with in the Northeast. But we will be doing that so that our goal is, are we here?
I feel like we volunteered for being here, but maybe.
Perfect. If that's
When would it have been?
that will be in either December or January. A really warm, balmy month, I'm sure, time to be here. So we will be doing that. And I'm a huge proponent of, I always went every year that they had them only because it was a good opportunity to go with, I had new board members and because I just was always looking to earn my points whenever I could to get my Better Board Citizenship Award. But yeah, so that'll be happening as well. So look for that in December and January, and we'll be publishing those dates soon because we kind of just got all those pieces finalized. The other last piece that you have in your miscellaneous pieces of paper, you have a single sheet document that's an evaluation. Ron has his in front of him. And if you would take a few minutes and provide just a little bit of feedback about your session tonight, that's really helpful to me. I will recap your work tonight, and I will include pieces of, one of your questions is, where do we need to keep focusing as a board? I'll give you a recap of that. I'll send the letter to Tim and I'll send it to Ron to share with the board as well.
This one
Yeah. Just want to make sure we have the,
might not be illegible.
you know, the beautiful thing about telling the students, you can like make them as big as possible. When I'm summarizing things, which is so helpful.
They'll have AI, they'll check into perfect penmanship.
Oh, really? Now, that is an accomplishment.
Friends, you did some great work tonight. I hope that you will continue to spend a little bit of time looking through your evaluations or your assessments that you did, because there's some great nuggets in there, pieces, and even looking how some of those pieces fit together. And the other thing is, you know, your self-evaluations can also be as simple as at the end of your meetings, talking about what did we do really well? Where did we focus on collaboration and communication tonight like we wanted to? And there may be times where you look at each other and say, and we didn't get to talk near as much about data as we wanted to, because we had to talk about the change of the law in blah, 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 or because we really had to cover the budget tonight and we had to get the budget certified and we didn't get to talk as much about data. That's okay. But even some of those short snippets during the course of your meetings can be helpful to you all. And it's one more chance to get to talk about what are you doing really well, because you're doing a lot of things. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you for inviting me into your district. It's not easy work. I know it's not. And I know that you all don't hear thank you very often, but I'm really grateful for what you do. And let me know how I can help next.
All right.
And I'm gonna collect stuff and I'll get out of your way.
Okay, so it is 7:30.